what is longevity? What are we trying to accomplish? First thing that I'm going to give you a whole bunch of numbers. So the first number that you should realize is in 1840, we were living until 39 on average. So move back 150 years, we are now living on average in most of the Western world to around 80. So it's been a doubling of our lifespan. And some will argue that a lot of this is due to a decrease in infant mortality, but it's only a fraction of it. So there's been a global increase in health, so we actually get to live double of what most of our forebears used to do, which is an amazing gift. But this comes with a dark cloud, or I was going to say a silver lining. It's not a silver lining, it's the opposite of it, which means that as we are getting to live older, we actually are also living sicker. And I'll mention a whole series of diseases. I think I might have done this last night, but I don't remember. Heart attack, stroke, type 2 diabetes, many forms of cancer, macular degeneration, osteoporosis, bone, hip fracture. The list goes on and on. This is what we're seeing around us from our parents or from our friends if we reach the age of 65. So it turns out that by the time any of you reaches 65, at least when we look at the population level, 70% of people carry at least one or have had one of these chronic diseases of aging. So these are diseases, again, for which the biggest risk factor is how old you are. By the time you reach 70, 70% of people carry two of these conditions. So when I ask an audience like this, and I'll ask to raise your hand, who wants to live to 150? That's typical. A few percent, 3 or 4%. And the reason you respond, the first time I asked this question, I was devastated. I thought nobody wants what we're working on. The reason you are reacting this way is because we associate disease with aging. And we do this on a good reason, because this is what aging means. It means getting sick. Now, does it have to be this way? No, there's an example among us of people who actually managed to not only live longer, it's the centenarians. By definition, they live to 100. And remarkably, the centenarians actually spend 5% of their lives afflicted by these chronic conditions. So your typical centenarians will live to 95 in perfect health, will have a rapid demise for about 5 years. Now, that sounds a lot more appealing than what most of us do, which is to go to 65 and then have an extra 15 years with disability and decreased quality of life. So while our field is focused on trying to increase longevity, to push the limit, major focus right now is health span. And so health span is your healthy years of life. Imagine living still to 80, but actually spending the last 5 years of your life afflicted by these conditions. And there are many good reasons to know that we can do this. The centenarians do it. That means there's got to be a way to do this. So along with this, I want to give you some good news and bad news. The good news, and we'll be discussing this a little more in a couple of minutes, is that most of you in this room could expect to live to 95 in good health today, without any supplements, without any interventions beyond what will be discussed during this session. 95 in good health. And so you might be scratching your head and saying, this doesn't make any sense, and I'll show you some data that actually supports this fact. The bad news is that we have increasing disparity in this country and across the world. And I'll tell you what is the strongest predictor of your life expectancy. Anyone wants to shout something? Socioeconomic status, that's actually close to the answer.
Nearly. Zip code.
Zip code, you got it. And that's actually, that's pretty remarkable. Now, I'll give you a free example of this. Who's from the Bay Area? So we have enough people who are not from the Bay Area. I'll tell you a little bit more about the area. So we're in Napa here. Next door is Sonoma. South of this is Marin County, where I live. Just when you cross the Golden Gate Bridge, you are in Marin County. It is one of the longest lived county in the country and in California. Average life expectancy in Marin is 85. In the country right now, it's 76. We're lagging behind most of the Western world, and actually lifespan in the US is currently decreasing. But even within Marin, and this is remarkable, so people breathing the same air you would think having access to the same food and everything. There are incredible disparities between communities. And I'll give you an example of a town called Sausalito. That's the one that you hit as soon as you cross the Golden Gate Bridge. Life expectancy there is 92 today, okay? 2 miles from there, Marin City, which is a more impoverished area, life expectancy is 77. So 77 to 92 is simply based on zip codes, socioeconomic status, or what we call the social determinants of health. And so I think as we think about this as a field, I have said again and again, longevity is not only for the healthy and wealthy, it is for everyone. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to really try to address these factors and to, advocate for them and really study what are the social determinants of health and how can we modify them. Now, off to our session. So why am I introducing this whole area in this way? Let's talk about the role of genetics and lifestyle. So there are two big forces that are at play in terms of how long we live. One is your makeup, what you've inherited from your parents, your genes that we cannot change and most likely will only change in the distant future, and then lifestyle factors. So I want to maybe have a raise of hand. If you think that genetics is dominant, raise your hand. Okay? If you think they're equal, okay? And if you think it's mostly lifestyle, okay, so this is a well-educated group of people. So I think that this has been known for a long time. The old numbers was 80% lifestyle, 20% genetics. This number has been revised recently based on a number of really key studies from the Calico group in South San Francisco. And the truest number is 93% of your life expectancy, health span and lifespan is determined by lifestyle factors. 7% by genetics. Now that's true for almost everyone in this room except if you have a first-degree relative who is a centenarian. There are some families who are very long-lived and there's a very strong genetic component. And in fact, it turns out many centenarians actually have very poor lifestyle. And I'll tell you one before we start the session, I won't go too much longer. I have a friend in New York who has one of the largest cohorts of centenarians in the country. And he had 4 siblings who were all centenarians, and the only one he hadn't had was Esther. So he went to visit Esther. She was the 5th member of the family. She was 102. He went to see her at her house, and he said, and she opens the door, she's 102, with a cigarette in her hand. And so he walks in and he says, Esther, I can't help to ask you, I mean, you're 102, if you ever considered stopping smoking? And she looked at him and she said, honey, I've had 4 doctors before you. They've all told me to quit smoking and they're all dead. So last point, when we think about lifestyle, so what do we mean? A number of studies, epidemiological studies have been conducted that really looked at what are the major factors. And I'll tell you one that I think will make John and Jordan, where I don't see them, John and Jordan actually happy, is the fact the strongest predictor of your life expectancy are 2 variables. One is human connection, and so they mean deep, loving relationships. You don't need to have many, but the more you have, the longer you're going to live. And I think this comes in spade here. I mean, there's an incredible community, and I'm really incredibly grateful to be part of this group and to get to know many of you. The other one is a sense of purpose, having a sense of where you're going, being of service, being useful, being helpful to society. So these are the 2 most important factors that can lead to a long lifespan. Second, third, fourth, and fifth are things that everyone has told you, or your mother or your grandmother has told you are important for longevity. It is nutrition, physical activity, sleep, stress mitigation. So these are actually the topics that we're going to hear today, this afternoon, by top experts. Last point that I'll make is I think we are at an incredibly important stage because many of these interventions have been defined on an epidemiological basis. That is, we study people, we know that people who exercise live longer than the others. It's very different from doing a clinical trial. Now, all of us, many of us, I suspect, do exercise, but we do this based on the latest article in the New York Times, 7 minutes, high-intensity interval training, an hour bike ride. So there's really there's very little data that really would allow you to define what is the optimal exercise regimen. The same thing for nutrition. Some of you are on a paleo diet, some of you are on this diet or that, some are fasting, some are... What is the optimal lifespan? Lifestyle factors that will increase your lifespan and your health span. I would venture to say that many of those are going to be determined in part by your genetic makeup. And so there's an incredible merging that's happening right now between precision medicine, the idea that we are all highly individual, and the optimal way for you to exercise, to eat, to sleep, and so on. And so this is a lot of our work currently at the Buck is really trying to bring the precision medicine tools to understanding how do we optimize lifespan on an individual basis.